The current generation Audi RS3 has made a big splash in this segment. It's beloved for its all-wheel drive capabilities and its livability, making it a great daily driver. And perhaps most importantly is its ability for it to be modified into a supercar killing beast. Given this cult-like love for the RS3, myself included in that group by the way, the new generation has some pretty big shoes to fill. And in today's episode, we are going to take a look at everything we need to know about this new generation RS3 and break down some footage of it, testing on the Nurburgring, to really start to put together the pieces of the puzzle that is the next RS3. Thankfully, Audi has decided to continue the RS3 and to continue offering it here in the US. For those of you that are maybe less familiar with the RS3, let's quickly break it down. The RS3 is the top dog of the A3 lineup. This line is Audi's entry-level sedan here in the US, and it's actually built on the MQB platform, which is shared with Volkswagen and used on their Golf lineup most predominantly. In terms of competition, the RS3, or the A3 in general, faces off against the BMW 2 Series and the Mercedes A-Class and CLA offerings. Both the BMW and Mercedes lineups have both been refreshed more recently, which really leaves the A3 to feel a bit outdated, especially felt in the interior. But with that being said, let's dive into what we can expect to see in this new generation, which is coming up later this year actually as a 2021 model, at least for the A3. Unfortunately, the RS3 will be a bit later and is expected in about a year's time as a 2022 model, with the S3 line launching somewhere in between the two. For 2022, the RS3 will be heading up an all-new generation. Audi has already unveiled the 2021 A3, so we have a very clear picture of what the RS3 will be working with here. The interior is greatly modernized with the newest infotainment system from Audi and overall just a drastically different approach and appearance within the cabin. So far, the new interior has been pretty polarizing actually with owners of the current gen vehicles. Speaking for myself, the owner of the current generation Audi S3, I'm actually a big fan of the new interior, and I think it goes a long way to making the new A3 line much more competitive against BMW and Mercedes offerings, which is very important for the brand. But as always, I'd love to hear what you guys think of this new interior down below in the comments. The exterior is much more of an evolution rather than a revolutionary change like the interior. Here is what the new A3 will look like. Overall, the RS3 will be lower, wider, and more aggressive, of course. Now, looking beneath the skin, it appears that a lot will be remaining the same with this new generation, which is actually a good thing for the most part. First and foremost is the platform that it's built upon. The new generation will still be built on the MQB platform, which again, not a bad thing at all, but there is one shortcoming with this platform, and that is the all-wheel drive system. As we all know, any Audi that has all-wheel drive is branded as Quattro, as that's really their denomination for any vehicle that has full-time all-wheel drive. But on the MQB platform, it is a Haldex-derived system, which in short means that it is actually a front-wheel drive biased system. It's still full-time all-wheel drive, but is front-wheel drive biased, and is capable of sending up to 50% of available power to the rear wheels. As soon as you step up into the A4 line or any larger Audi, they all use a mechanical all-wheel drive system which is different than the Haldex. This is a torsion-based system which is actually rear-wheel drive biased, usually at a 60-40 split. So the main disadvantage here for the RS3 is in handling and driving characteristics. The front wheel bias makes the RS3 prone to understeer when it's being pushed really hard around corners, which usually keeps it from being a top choice for a track car. This also contributes to why you see so many RS3s being built for straight line speed or quarter-mile runs rather than as dedicated track cars. Besides this one shortcoming, the platform itself has really proved itself on the current generation to hold up to everything the RS3 can throw at it. Perhaps even more important than the platform, however, is the engine, at least from the perspective of enthusiasts like myself. The beautiful 2.5-liter 5-cylinder engine from the current generation will still be making way to the new generation, and that is an absolute blessing. Audi has not said anything officially about the output of this engine, but it's widely rumored and I'd say widely expected that the horsepower rating will bump up a little bit. In current models, it makes 394 horsepower, which is actually down a little bit from 2018 and prior models, thanks to the addition of an OPF filter in the exhaust, yada yada, but essentially it makes just shy of 400 horsepower. So a lot of journalists and people in the media are assuming that the new generation will make a little bit more, somewhere around the 420 horsepower mark, with some revised exhaust or intake and tuning, just to bump that number up a little bit, which would make it much more competitive with the CLA 45 out of the Mercedes base camp at 416 horsepower, and it would put it securely ahead of the M2 Comp at 405 horsepower from BMW. Another point of contention is the transmission. There are some people out there saying that the new generation will be using a ZF 8-speed transmission, and frankly, that's not true. The S4 did switch from a dual clutch system to a ZF-based 8-speed system. However, that is a longitudinally mounted engine and a completely different platform. The MQB platform, with its transversely mounted inline 5, will still be using the dual clutch transmission, similar to what we have in the previous generation, as well as the new A3 is coming out with a dual clutch. So just want to point that out there, that it will have a dual clutch transmission still, which I'm a big fan of, not a ZF sourced 8-speed. The transmission will likely be the same unit, the DQ500 from the current generation, which is a very solid unit, holds a lot of power, and offers great performance, so no complaints there. One interesting note is that the A3 is actually kind of doing a reversal here. Unlike the previous generation, you can actually now get the A3, the new 2021 A3, in a manual offering, at least in Europe. It's not been confirmed, but most likely this will not be coming to the US, and it's even more far-fetched to think that the RS3 will have a manual. But there is a sliver of hope that the RS3 may have a manual offering, but realistically, it will be a 7-speed dual clutch. So overall, mechanically, the RS3 is certainly an evolutionary change. It's really just making revisions to systems that are already very good. So really the last thing to talk about is driving characteristics. Obviously, no one has been able to have their hands on a new RS3 yet, other than those who are lucky enough to do the test drivers or Audi and get to drive them on the Nurburgring. So the best thing we can do right now is look at the footage of them testing on the Nurburgring and get kind of an idea of the handling characteristics. We will be looking specifically at the sedan testing, since that's what I'm most familiar with in the US market. However, our partner channel does have a longer video, about 3 to 4 minutes, of the RS3 Sportback testing on the Nürburgring if you're interested in seeing more footage. So taking a look here, first things off the bat is obviously the iconic 5-cylinder sound of the RS3, which is music to my ears, and I'm not sure if you guys agree, but to me that's a great sound. Obviously we see the black oval exhaust tips, and through some of the thick camo we can start to get the idea of the stylistic changes from the base A3 to the RS3 model. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of footage of the sedan testing, as I mentioned, but in this turn in particular, we can start to see kind of the classic understeer situation faced by any all-wheel drive vehicle. The driver comes into this turn pretty hot and starts to face a little bit of an understeer situation as they slide to the outside of the corner, which is expected by the driver. And then once the vehicle starts to overcome that understeer, we can see the front end quickly comes back around and the rear end is allowed to rotate. Overall, this is pretty typical of all-wheel drive systems, but it is actually pretty promising to see too, because this is showing that the Haldex all-wheel drive system is handling the situation pretty well. It doesn't take too long for it to respond, grab traction in the front, bring the front around, and help the back rotate. Obviously, the Haldex system is limited, at least in its current fashion. It cannot send more than 50% power to the rear, so it has a hard time rotating, but with some tuning and torque vectoring and intelligent use of the brakes, Audi is really refining how the Haldex system can be used on a track setting like this. And if this footage here is anything to go by, it shows that the new generation is going to take this even further than the current generation, which is already getting pretty good, but not quite there. So I remain hopefully optimistic that the new generation will be pretty solid in this regard, but only time will tell. It is still Haldex based, unfortunately, but I think it will be an improvement over the current generation, just seeing how this handles here. Once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below on what you think of the handling characteristics here. So let's just take a second here. I've thrown a lot of information out, so let me take a second to step back and kind of succinctly summarize it. First off, on the interior, this is where the big change comes in the new generation. The new A3 is a huge revolutionary leap forward for the lineup. The interior is much more modern and refreshed and really sets it up to compete well with the Mercedes-Benz CLA and A-Class, and I would argue puts it significantly ahead of the BMW M2 competition interior. Second point, the exterior is definitely evolutionary. It is really just Audi working to bring the A3 exterior up to speed and in line with the rest of their lineup for new vehicles, which again is a good thing because it's creating brand identity within these new Audi lineups. So overall, it's positive news, but nothing groundbreaking here. And third and finally, mechanically and underneath the skin, the new RS3 is really not really changed much at all, which is actually a good thing in this case. The previous or current RS3 is a great vehicle and it has really just a lot of great things going for it. So I'm glad Audi isn't trying to change it up too much. It's really taking what's working now, refining it a bit to fine tune it and make it a little bit better for the next generation, which is great. Because if it ain't broke, right, don't fix it. So that really kind of sums up the new RS3. Really looking forward to seeing this vehicle and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. But as always guys, thank you for checking out this video. I hope you found it informative and entertaining. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and get subscribed for more videos like this one.